This
I
conference
have
will
12.
now be recorded.
I have 12 o'clock on my phone, so we'll get started. First of all, I want to welcome everyone. I'm just going to go to the next slide. I'm Marie Mold, and I'm the Manager of Stakeholder Engagement at Electricity Human Resources Canada, or EHRC. Thank you for joining our webinar on managing teleworkers. It's a practice that has become the new normal for so many of us during this pandemic. I'm sorry. We know this is an incredibly stressful time and are doing our best to support you over the coming weeks or months. Oh, I hear some audio. Okay, so more on that end at the end of this session today. I'm just going to turn off my camera actually so that we can all hear each other and there'll be less echo. Before we get started, first of all, I want to extend our condolences to the province of Nova Scotia. I also want to welcome some of the participants today from our neighbors down south, all the way from the US. Welcome. I have just a few housekeeping notes. We will be recording this webinar and we will host it onto our website and YouTube. There will be a Q&A session after the presentation. So please feel free to type in your questions at any stage during the presentation and we'll queue them in. That's the little chat icon that you see at the top of your screen. Oh my goodness, for those of you who don't know who we are, EHRC is a national not-for-profit organization supporting the human resources needs of the Canadian electricity sector. We have heard from many of our members that one of the biggest challenges during COVID-19 is managing and supporting employees working from home. Many people have never had to work from home before. While many of you who do are reporting that it's very different being forced to do it, and that's before you include the dog, the cat, and possibly kids and spouses who are also at home. I'm confident that today's content will help you, both as an individual or a manager while you work with your team in this new reality. Now I'm very delighted to introduce our presenter, Victoria Miles, who is a strategic partner of Vision Wheel Marketing with 25 years of experience in helping organizations shape and deliver organizational strategies. Whether it has been through leadership roles in global brand companies, as an entrepreneur in a leading edge corporate consultancy, or working for international and national nonprofits, she has always focused on those things that will be truly transformative. She provides counsel to both corporate and nonprofit clients alike and loves a good whiteboard. And data, she loves data, and that I can attest to. Welcome, Victoria. I'm now going to hand it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much for that gracious introduction. I recognize a few names out there. I see Sarah Robinson, and we used to work together many years ago. Hi, how are you? I'm just going to turn off my webcam and then I'm going to switch to presentation mode. And as Marie said, we'll have lots of time at the end for questions as well. Okay. Just getting into the PowerPoint here. Be patient. Okay, there we go. All right, well, thank you so much for that gracious introduction, Marie, and thank you to Michelle and the EHRC team for inviting me to share with you today. I am really grateful. I have spent the better part of my how many year career understanding what engages people, knowing people, focusing people, spurring them on, arming them with the right tools, and then loving them and really appreciating them. I mean, that's been the heart of everything I've done over the past however many years that was. So it's Monday, March 9th, and I'm leading this full day workshop of 21 managers from a sizable government department. I'd been invited there as they were trying to figure out how best to roll out the Treasury Board's direction to embrace teleworking employees. So part of that was training for managers so they could adapt to a remote workforce. During the course, we looked at benefits and drawbacks to piloting and over the course of the day really unpacked kind of everything they needed to know to start testing this out. I mean, their plan was to start small, maybe with a few ready people, maybe like once or twice a week, and then gradually moving up from there when they could prove this was working and productivity wouldn't wane but actually increase. After lunch, a couple of the managers said they needed to pop out for a quick call at 2 o'clock. Could we maybe break early? Who would have known that 15 minutes would change everything? When they returned, they were visibly shaken. They'd been told that all government travel would come to a halt immediately due to the threats around COVID-19. The meeting changed. It went from nice to have information to we need this. And moreover, it went from if we'll do this to this is happening. By Friday of that same week, March 13th, it was real. Schools were closing and businesses were sending people home. I've thought a lot about that group since then and what they're putting into practice now that they're working during a crisis from home. What I do know is that this has given them, and really all of us, the opportunity to incorporate new ways of working which will last far beyond our current status. And for that, we should be optimistic. In this shortened version of our longer workshop around managing teleworkers, we'll focus in on 3 key things today. The culture shifts that are already taking place and what you need to learn to manage your remote workforce, building and sustaining trust, and then we'll peek at anticipating the future challenges such as managing conflict, which is a key component of employee engagement. I'll share a few examples of what some of our clients are doing to keep engagement high, and I really want you to know that I've tried to include some real practical takeaways so you can leave feeling like you have a few new tools as well. So the first most obvious thing to remember as a manager of teleworkers is that these are your people. You know them, you hired them, you've trained them, you've rewarded them, you've promoted them. So let's all start from the same place. These are the same people, but in a physically different environment. Now, I want to be really clear before we move on. Your people may not have changed, but things in their life certainly have. For some of them, they're experiencing stress from health issues to parenting to isolation and any number of other real and present symptoms of the current lockdown. And while there is a whole body of work right now focused on helping them deal with these issues, we won't have time in our limited 30 minutes to nuance everything. But from your leader's vantage point, it is worth spending time, dare I say critical to do. Just take a look at your organization and start capturing some of those sentiments. So now that a few weeks have passed and your people are settling into this different routine, many of you leaders are likely already feeling that culture shift. Some organizations are really struggling, but there are others who are finding ways to thrive, even grow in this time. Now, under normal circumstances, where there is an intentional plan to shift to this new model, we would normally call out and recognize some of the real benefits. So with a huge caveat that these are not normal times, I really do want to dwell for a quick second on some of the benefits that can be gained for employees, for employers, and even for the community. So when it comes to some of the benefits for employees, they include things like travel cost savings and savings on parking fees, less or no commuting time, more flexibility and perhaps improved quality of life. I mean, they might be working in a quieter environment with less interruptions. Of course, there's the expected higher morale. And then if the work hours are flexible, really the ability to capitalize on personal peak productivity periods. Last, an increased control in terms of work scheduling and perhaps even child and elder care. Now for the employer, there's the increased productivity and reduced absenteeism, perhaps less disruptions during bad weather and other emergencies, improved recruitment and retention options. For example, have you thought about how it provides more options when accommodating employees with disabilities? And for the government in particular, one of the key benefits they cite is the anticipated savings in facility costs. But last, it's that ability for the business to function in an emergency via remote locations to preserve business continuity. And here we are. Ordinarily, the first step is building a plan for setting up teleworking. And it's considering if the organization is ready to move to this new model. So ordinarily, you would assess readiness in a whole bunch of areas, but one of the ones that is of interest to us today is employee readiness. Usually, we recommend that employees complete a self-assessment because it should not be assumed that every employee can be a successful teleworker. That could be happening right now. But this is our first practical takeaway from today. A good self-assessment is a tool that managers can use to start a conversation and dive into the anticipated challenges an employee might have. I mean, although you are now in a forced telework situation, it is still worth checking in with each employee using this as a guideline. Rather than asking them to fill this in, and you could use it to direct a conversation with them. This way, you can ask them some of the pertinent questions and then use this as a checklist for your own benefit. It'll help you gauge which of your team members are excelling and which require added coaching or direction, and then in what areas. It does focus in part on the environment in which they are creating in their own home. And so it's really important to be mindful of the way you probe. For example, you may not want to say, do you have a quiet place to work with no distractions, knowing that they are working at home with 3 children who are also expecting to be homeschooled, entertained, and maybe even fed. But having this intel will allow you to prioritize some of the key areas that you may want to focus on as you support your people. Have you heard of personal peak productivity periods? This is key, and it's something that may lead to practical changes you can start making tomorrow. As a manager, you may want to work individually with your team to have them consider this question. What times of the day are you most productive? Now, working from home will make this clear to many people as their schedules are disrupted. As a manager, do you see an opportunity here to shift something culturally? I mean, the 9 to 5 routine is really based on a workforce that adapts to this kind of artificial set of rules, but do you now have an opportunity to capitalize on a team that can be more productive based on the times they feel most creative? Or if you're like a couple of our clients who have large call centers, can you set new schedules to maximize this opportunity and take advantage of the early birds and the night owls? You'll know this by having that open, honest conversation with each of them. Next, as a manager, you need to acknowledge the work at home traps. When you're working at home, the distractions will hit you like an avalanche. And unlike when you're working in the office, these distractions are often really enticing. Television, bed, loved ones, exercise, shopping, you name it. And the distractions will come in all shapes and forms. You must help your people and yourself learn to avoid them, at least up to a point. Although it may be tempting to carry a laptop to the bedroom and work from bed, the next logical step is maybe to take a nap. Then you'll get nothing done and then wind up scrambling to meet the deadlines at the end of the day. So what else are they doing? Helping a teleworker adjust to their new work style is an important part of the manager's responsibility. It's really important to acknowledge up front that your workforce are probably doing a lot of things other than working. Now, I want to challenge you leaders. Have you considered why they're doing it? Have you had to tell someone they're non-essential? We've been working with one of our clients for some time, and the woman who was directing the project wrote us the saddest email I've ever read. We hadn't heard from her in a bit, so after sending questions and parameters for the next stage of what was supposed to be an important project, kind of high on the priority list of the senior team, it says this: I'm sorry for the silence. I'm considered non-essential right now. I've also not had email due to technical limitations. I'll have spotty access here and there for the next few weeks as we figure out our new reality of working remotely. The initiative has been delayed with the possibility of being canceled. Things are pretty up in the air right now while senior management works to get organized. Imagine, her raison d'etre project has been canceled or postponed. She now has no reason to work harder. She's growing unsatisfied and could even be drifting into boredom. And on top of that, her sentiment, veiled or not, towards managers like yourself is souring. Even if you haven't had the non-essential conversation directly, your people may be reading that into your current situation, even if it's not there. So where to from this point? Our next practical takeaway is to consider a quick third-party survey. We call ours the reality check. The reality check is a real-time rapid survey which provides insights into what your people are feeling fast. It's not a full employee engagement survey, but it's a tool you can use to gauge how they are feeling and what some of their top concerns are. And it can also yield amazing untapped ideas. Later, I'll share how one of our clients is using it to manage their teleworkers and even extended it to their board and members. Now, since we're looking at managing teleworkers specifically here, A quick reality check, different from the one-on-one with your team members, should be grounded in 3 things. First, it should be relevant for today, asking questions that relate to a narrow window of time and focused on the key things that are priority 1 for the organization. For example, if security of data is important, ask questions to probe how aware they are of security issues. If you are expecting people to understand how to use new communication tools, you may want to gauge people's ability to use them effectively and if they need help or training. The next is that it should be actionable. Consider what areas will have impact specifically when designing questions. You need to be thinking, are we really prepared to act on this question? Does this question actually tell us something useful as opposed to something just interesting? And then, is it time bound? For example, one of our clients is asking things like, what new skills might you want to learn during this time? For people who have been deemed non-essential, what about working with them on a small professional development plan? If they stay within the organization, you'll have a newly skilled individual. And if you have to sadly let them go, they'll leave with a new cadre of tools they didn't previously possess, and they will feel way more positive about their departure and way more confident for future employers. When it comes to loving your people, this one practical suggestion of offering a training opportunity right now that's free or low cost to you could be invaluable. And the last, it should really be forward-looking. Now is not the time to be diving into the past or unpacking historical issues. This is about getting a read on the culture and where people are at today. So we get asked all the time, how do you make sure people participate? Well, in our experience, there are 2 things driving their enthusiasm and willingness to participate honestly. If they believe that you will take action on the results they share, they are way more likely to participate. So it's key to let them know what you plan to do after and when. Secondly, if they believe it is confidential and anonymous, usually handled by a third party preferably, they are also more likely to share their thoughts honestly. We just deployed these with one of our clients I'll mention later, and within the first 12 hours, we had 88 responses. Leaders, your people are looking for ways to engage with you. Are you making it easy for them? Just a word of caution, however. Organizations who are unprepared to communicate the value of these initiatives or underplay their consequences find it can negatively impact culture at large. So please be prepared and heed this word of caution. When you focus on engagement, you need to follow through. So let's dive into a few other practical tools for you as managers when it comes to your remote workforce. Managing a remote workforce is a skill that more and more people will need to learn, but it's more than just managing. It's also a deliberate effort to keep people engaged with the work and with each other. Why does it matter that people work together in the same location? Well, leadership expert Kevin Eikenberry says, when you work together, you get a lot of information just by osmosis. You can look over and see someone banging their head on their monitor in frustration or overhear conversations in the break room. But when people work remotely, often the signs of strain are missed, and then the opportunity to assist might be too late. They already feel you don't care or maybe have ignored their issue. The results are problems like failed deadlines, poor teamwork, bad communication, low employee engagement, and retention issues. So what are some best practices? Well, I came up with 6 for our call today. The first is talk about your teleworking protocols. Meet with your team. Have an open conversation to agree on your organizational norms for teleworking. Brainstorm with your employees on what it means to telework as a team. The second is be transparent, please. No one is expecting you as leaders to have all the answers figured out, but be honest about what you know and what you don't know. You are in a position of leadership now, which means that along the way, you've acquired both technical skills and great emotional skills. No one is getting ahead without both, and now more than ever, it's time for you to pour out all you have for your people. And if you don't feel you have great abilities to be authentic and resilient, emotionally aware, trustworthy, or transparent, then be honest with yourself. There are courses and there's training to help you. The next is to check in and check them out. We've already implied that you need to be in touch with your people more frequently, but start by just saying hello every morning. It sounds basic, but an email, a phone, a Skype, whatever works. A casual message daily with longer meetings set up weekly with a formal date and time are really important to staying connected. Next, help them to do what they said they would do. Experts say that teleworking does not create inefficiencies, but rather exposes them. That's right. Telework does not necessarily create these inefficiencies, but exposes them. Maybe you're experiencing this already. It's still your job to help employees be accountable for their work fairly and promptly. Don't change that habit, but don't micromanage now either. One of your best tools as a manager is your ability to foster the team. Keep them working closely. Camaraderie is important for teleworkers. After all, it's one of their #1 concerns, the FOMO, the fear of missing out. Remote employees can feel isolated. Pay attention to opportunities to facilitate conversation during meetings. Sometimes we get asked, well, what do you do in an organization where you have a mix of both blue collar and white collar workers? Well, you need to find a way to support them, some kind of collective action to help them, because otherwise you're completely isolating people who are critically important to your operation. You may want to consider a task force or ways to generate solutions to keep them connected and ensure they still feel valued. And please include them in the planning. Last, update. Really help teleworkers feel more informed and valued by updating them and everyone a lot more often. Over communicate everything, new hires, new goals, updates on your performance, big and small. Over the years and through innumerable conversations with leaders, we've learned that there are 3 things that keep you up at night. And no, one of them isn't drinking coffee at 11, although that is sometimes necessary when working late. The first is vision. When your people are not being provided the basic information they need to see where the organization is going, they can't connect at work. This is a vision issue. Vision issues are a problem because employees will have a hard time setting goals and managers will feel that constant source of frustration with these employees. The second is purpose. When your people don't feel valued in their job or workplace, or they feel like their job is menial, they will feel a lack of meaning. This is a purpose issue. And purpose issues are a problem because they start at the top or maybe the bottom, depending on how you look at it. But everything you do as an organization needs to flow from the why. If you've read anything from Simon Sinek, he has a lot to say on this, and start with why. When your people understand your collective why, they feel more engaged. And the last is trust. When they aren't receiving any meaningful feedback in order to become a more valuable employee, you have a trust issue. And trust issues are insidious and can be extremely toxic. They are the life breath of a disgruntled employee, and they're contagious. And guess what? If you have trust issues, they will be exposed during a remote work situation. How do you know if trust is an issue? There are some clues we can point to, and just bear in mind that this is a lot to take on board all at once. So if you want to replay this webinar later, you might want to do so to catch all the points here. People say sometimes listening to me is like drinking from a fire hose. So I apologize, but I really want to get you the most amount of content here. So how do you know if trust is an issue? #1, team members may stop referring to themselves as we, focusing instead on their personal needs and agendas. Silos might start developing among subgroups, leading to communication breakdowns. There's a steep rise in lack of communication or information sharing, which leaves obviously team members in the dark. Micromanagement starts to increase, suggesting that people don't trust each other to follow through on commitments. Conflicts are not resolved, and there's more discussion offline. Team members are openly negative, undermining team confidence. And team members aren't regarding the commitments of others as credible, making collaboration difficult, if not impossible. And then there is low productivity and maybe even missed deadlines. Do you recognize any of these? So while I can't guess at which ones are problematic for you or not, here are a few key takeaways to consider when it comes to building trust from a manager's perspective. The first is to encourage your team members to communicate openly and honestly. Seems pretty basic. It gets harder from here. Model positive behaviors. Maybe try implementing a communication plan for team interactions and ensure that they're accessible and responsive. Help teams become better acquainted and learn about each other's backgrounds and experience. If they see each other more personally, they may be less likely to feel the trust issues. Of course, teams should use tools like video and instant messaging and encourage spontaneous and informal interactions among members or the team, allowing them to collaborate freely, get to know each other organically, but huge caution here. We've heard that Slack and Skype and Microsoft Teams can be the death of remote workers as they are constantly bombarded with the pings and beeps and whooshes all day long. Do yourself a favor and set protocols on these, please, and help people recognize if they're becoming a nuisance. At Vision Wheel, we use these tools with each other and some of our clients as well. And having that open line of communication, I gotta tell you, it's great for the à la minute requests. But we also embrace what we call bubble time, which is just that. I'm going into a bubble that is undisturbed time for thinking, planning, writing, whatever's needed. Team members need to be empowered to make and act on decisions. This is really important, especially because they won't always be able to wait for approval on all tasks. Spend some time thinking through which decisions can be made without your approval as needed. Now, it may surprise you to learn that I actually have an honors degree in history with a specialty in military strategy and totalitarianism. I know. And while in my early career, I didn't see any natural linkages to the work I was doing in the world of branding and employee engagement, I have come to appreciate the foundation, the study of influence, and the language it supplied. If you've read about military strategy, there's a concept taught during battle of distributed authority with central coordination. We need the very same here. Businesses, large and small, are embracing this to help deal with local country issues, store issues, or city issues that could never be coordinated in a central way. They report daily stand-up meetings where people from all over the world can talk about their problems and local decisions. And how are they keeping unified? Shared platforms, shared strategies, and most importantly, shared values. Last, so important, our very favorite strategy, and we've seen this working brilliantly. Have your team members partner up with other people in other locations to encourage them to develop working relationships. So these teams can be switched up over time as well. Managing conflict can be more difficult for leaders of teleworkers and virtual teams. It is not uncommon for people to be misunderstood when they're communicating through email, telephone, or other networking tools. Here's the thing. When conflict occurs amongst the remote team, the urgency to resolve it may become lessened. There are lots of ideas we've seen used very effectively to resolve conflict or keep it minimized, insisting on face-to-face meetings and under normal circumstances, creating a virtual water cooler, finding reasons to celebrate, partnering a team. But the one thing we know for sure that's guaranteed to work 100% of the time is this. Create space and time for employees to come to you directly. This is the magic formula. So we've covered a lot of ground in our short time, and I just want to leave you with a few practical examples of organizations we're working with who are trying out some new engagement tools to really compensate during this season. First, one of our clients is the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation. Recognizing that communication is one of their main drivers of keeping their people feeling valued, we quickly brainstormed a few ways to engage with them during the shutdown. They said to us, our members need to get information in their hands as quickly as possible. It needs to be current and it needs to be organized. Then they went on to say that it needed to be cost effective, of course, and showed they cared. Well, in 2018, we had already launched something called the Info Hub, which was a web-enabled app that gave them access to all their HR documents, key dates, FAQs, etc. in one spot. It was actually the perfect solution for this time. To help them manage their teleworking members, we developed a special COVID-19 response section, which now houses everything they need to know, from personal support information to updates on the school board and provincial decisions to tools. We also importantly included stories from members themselves to encourage each other. It's been wildly successful and has actually been recognized as one of the most valuable assets on hand right now. Another one of our clients is working to reuse their onboarding platform, kind of their system for educating and providing online resources. If you have one of these, think about transferring it into kind of a work at home resource center. Do you have existing tools that could be redeployed or rethought to shortcut development time? With Frontline Credit Union, which is an Ottawa-based financial institution, coincidentally, which also represents Hydro Ottawa workers, shout out to Hydro Ottawa, their concern was showing decisive action. They asked us how we could help them show their staff, their board and members how much they cared, and get some really quick feedback so they could take action on their people's most pressing needs. We launched a survey immediately. We kept it anonymous, except in one key area, and this is important. We told them that Frontline was looking for ways to help them really practically. Because we were administering it, we let the participants know that we would decouple their responses so it stayed confidential and only sent the names and contact information of those who responded to the question, "Is there anything we can do for you today? Provide your name and contact." People did not hesitate. As I mentioned before, we had 88 responses in the first 12 hours. Have you thought about checking in with your team and maybe your board and other stakeholders? The last is Bell. We've been working with this global brand for many, many years across most of their lines of business. And we've developed a particular specialty of understanding how to engage people within their call centers. Each quarter, we design a fun, interactive campaign to connect their teams to business drivers, ranging from new product launches to changes in strategy. It takes new forms each quarter, from microsites with task-based learning to more kind of traditional training modules. For them, the challenge was put to us like this. Our call center team needs to be more aware of the needs of our customers at this time. To manage their learning, can we add a component to our quarterly motivational campaign to reward them for learning soft skills like empathy and compassion? Because we were already underway, we reworked the campaign elements to add kind of new modules that unpacked what it actually sounded like to be more compassionate and empathetic with customers. And we wrote scenarios that would help them role play for practicing these skills so they felt confident. Managing this team through this challenge was all about making sure they connected. What are you doing already that can be tweaked or updated to reflect the season we're in? How you manage your teleworkers this time will have a lasting impact on them. If they feel valued, no matter the circumstances, you will have done your job as a leader. I really appreciate you participating today. I really, really hope you've learned a few key things to take back. I'm sure there are a few questions, so I'll kick it over to Marie and do my best to try and answer as many as I can. And if not, we can follow up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victoria. I actually learned something new from you today, so that was enlightening. I just remind everybody if they want to ask a question to put it in the chat section. I'm going to start off the questions with this actual one, Victoria. So now we're having to hire teleworkers. Can you tell us what should we be looking for, or are there questions we should ask to find out if they are suitable?
That's a really great question. Yeah, I guess there's a few things. We actually look at some of this stuff, like I said, in that longer workshop, but a couple things I would focus in on. One is clearly looking for things on the resume that contain kind of past teleworking experience. So if they've worked remotely before, even kind of a part-time capacity, do they have a really clear idea of what it entails? Understanding things like the importance of time management, functioning kind of without managers, etc. I would also ask them to describe their home office and have them go into a little bit of detail. You know, is it adequate? That would give you a good sense of whether or not they would be able to work in a remote situation. And then I think just basic things like, do they seem like a self-starter? Asking real probing questions around those types of things, and can they sensibly really discuss some of the challenges of remote work? Let's not pretend that there aren't challenges that come along with this. So are they honest about some of the challenges, and can you dive into that area? I think the only other thing I would say is just looking for evidence of life outside of work. I think it's really important when you're interviewing people for remote situations to really feel out what other hobbies they have, other things that are going on in their life. It's really key to the health of a teleworker. Thanks for asking that. That's a really good question.
Okay, thank you. And the other question that I'm going to bring up right now is in regards to our industry. So it is similar to others. where not all employees can telework, or they're deemed, I won't say essential, but I'm going to say frontline during a time of crisis, similar to COVID-19. So are there some tips you can share on how to keep those specific employees motivated?
That's a really good question. I'm just thinking about some tips. Now, here's how I would think about it to answer it. I would say, because the team becomes so much more important during a remote work situation, anything that you can do to build team, so whether that's, like I said, some partnering strategies, people that are maybe inside, outside the office, or you know, intentional calls where you can bring diverse teams together just so that they can share perspectives of ones that are still in the office and are essential and non-essential. And then, you know, over communicating everything again, just making sure that all the communications aren't directed externally, but recognize the things that are happening internally. We will come back and we will have a time when there will still be remote workers. It's just important to remember to keeping people engaged. They all feel valued in this time. So focusing on the things that will bring value to them would be, I think, the last thing. Thanks, Marie.
Okay, I have a couple of more here. So the next question is, how do you strike the balance between supporting your team, especially one with a number of junior staff, and your own responsibilities and deliverables?
That's a really good question. So this is a little bit about managing up as well. You know, I think that there is an opportunity right now to redefine what it means to be a leader within organizations and a manager within organizations. It's your responsibility as a leader is to look after your team and to ensure that your team is productive and filling their full potential, because when they are doing that, then naturally the things that you are responsible for your manager or your senior people will be fulfilled as well. It is still going to be hard to juggle those things, but I would say that during this time, your priority focus should be mostly on your people.
Okay, here's another question. What do you see the return to work process looking like when this is all over? Positives and negatives, please.
Oh my gosh, seriously. Clearly was not in the easy category. That's a really good question. At the beginning, I said that there would be a time when we would come back, and that we shouldn't just be looking at this situation as something that's been a detriment to organizations. It's been given organizations the ability to leapfrog a whole bunch of things and move pretty quickly into figuring out some processes and things to get remote workers set up that would be long-term as well. The back to work process is going to be bumpy, I think, for most organizations. Everything that we've been thinking about and reading and researching around this has been just helping organizations to think through what engagement will look like. How do we bring people back and have them connect again face to face, particularly because this social distancing has not just been remote work, generated. It has created distance between people, and so we're thinking through things like, okay, well, what kind of engagement tools can we build to, and what kind of rewards and motivational pieces can we put in to have people kind of reacclimatize, I guess, to the workplace. There will still be a lot of fear. There will be a long time, and there could be a second wave. There could be all of those other things that are anticipated. So it's going to be bumpy. I think.
Okay. Well, I'll ask another question. How about if you had to sum up 3 keys to telework success, what would they be?
3 keys to telework success. Well, I think the first is technology, making sure that your teleworkers have the appropriate technology supports that they need in order to stay connected to the organization. Hardware, software, access points, high-speed residential internet, whatever that is. So the first key, I think, is making sure technology is in place. The second thing is I would probably prioritize management training. I think that it's really important for managers to get a grasp on what it means to oversee teleworkers and We've spent way before this all happened, we've been spending time working with lots of organizations around helping people to be equipped for this time. But it's really, you need to be thinking through things like productivity and employee-specific performance goals, and there's this really great quote around productivity just in that management training, that it's, you shouldn't be managing the way school teachers do by attendance, but I think it says but the way college professors do by results. So the second thing I would say is like management training, and then maybe the last one, and I would have said this before as well, a real sense of executive buy-in and vision. It's really critical that there be kind of visible leadership and vision casted leadership from the top. So those would be the three success, I'd say: technology, management training, and then real leadership vision.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here. Can you elaborate on why the inefficiencies will be emphasized in telework situation?
Why inefficiencies are, why they are emphasized, why they come about?
Yes.
Well, they come about for a number of reasons. I mean, one of them is just the number of distractions that people have to manage, and the other things that are going on in their life. We're not in a situation, obviously, right now, and everyone would agree, of normal telework situations. This is working during a crisis from home. So there are inefficiencies that will happen because of people's inability inability to feel equipped to be able to do their job properly. The distractions, like I said, that are happening, and then, and even some of the technology tools being a distraction. But the reason why I said that quote about the fact that inefficiencies are highlighted during a telework situation is that we really shouldn't assume everybody is a great teleworker and has a great ability to work remotely. And in fact, if we weren't in this situation right now, there are people that you probably wouldn't put into a remote situation because they were already struggling with efficiency and productivity in the office. So this is highlighting now those things. This is now bringing to light in a much more direct way, in a serious way sometimes, what's happening in that person's life that is causing some of those things. So that's why I mentioned it earlier.
Okay. I have one more question here, and then we can sum it up. Yes, lots of questions. It's wonderful. To help people connect, do you have any team building activities for staff while working from home?
Yeah, lots. In fact, what I really love to do during the workshop is to brainstorm some of these. So I try to capture them, and I have a huge list. I'll give you some of my favorites though. One of them is we call it share a snapshot. So fun team building activity is, saying at the beginning of your call share a snapshot of the kind of the shoes you're wearing right now, or the socks you're wearing, or a snapshot of your office at home, or what's outside your window right now. So that's one thing I love to do. The second thing is playing trivia. So it's a really great way to help people kind of that are working together as a team, connect. You might want to keep a trivia game like ongoing for a number of weeks and have scoring. So it's really team building over time, and it's kind of fun for them to do unexpected kind of trivia questions. And then, in those meeting situations, just really making sure you do build in some casual, fun, non-work related conversations. So team building shouldn't just necessarily be around, the project that you're working on, but also getting people to connect really personally. So, people talking about their favorite movies they just watched, what they binged on Netflix last weekend, their pets, children, etc. So there's a few tips, but lots of fun team building ideas.
Okay, thanks. And I won't be sharing what I watched on Netflix recently, but anyway, thank you for that. So I'm going to actually finish up, and I want to thank everybody for the great questions today. So first of all, I want to thank you, Victoria.
Oh, you're welcome.
And all of the participants today. We will be sending out a very quick poll afterwards requesting topics you'd like to see for future webinars. Victoria is also able to provide additional support on workshops on managing teleworkers, along with plethora amount of topics. And you can find more about her on visionwheel.ca. And if you are an EHRC member, please send me a message if you'd like to receive more information how you can avail from some of these workshops and our new partnership with Vision Wheel. You can stay informed about future webinars and resources by signing up for our newsletter on electricityhr.ca. Our next webinar will be an introduction to the federal government's emergency subsidy programs, and the following webinar will focus on mental health. So I wish everybody a good rest of your day, and we hope that you will join us soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.